Hello, this is Mark Washington. Thank you for joining me again. This time we are going to talk about Georgetown and their upcoming NCAA tournament opponent that they have Colorado coming up, and that is a that's obviously an opponent that they will have to get familiar with, considering that Colorado is not a natural rival. It's not someone that you come in and that you play a lot. Obviously, the Pac-12 doesn't really see the Big East unless for some reason they're in the same preseason tournament or something along those lines. So Georgetown gets to learn a new opponent, and there's a new opponent that has to learn Georgetown. So that really, really works both ways. But let's start out by talking a little bit about Colorado. Their coach is Tad Boyle, 22-8 season. They finished third in the Pac-12. So they were runner-up in the Pac-12 tournament. They lost in the Pac-12 finals to Oregon State. They've been very, very good every year. They've been very good all year. And the Pac-12 was sort of top-heavy. You had guys teams that was disappointing, like UCLA, who I think thought they were going to have a bigger year, and they're playing in the NCAA playing game. But then you had USC, who was an electric type of player with a lottery pick in Mobley. So the Pac-12 was competitive at spots. And you can probably say the same thing about the Big East. You could probably say the Big East was competitive at spots, especially any conference that has DePaul. You can always say they're competitive at spots and not so competitive at other spots. But certainly with Colorado, because of the success of their season, they did garner a lot of accolades. Obviously, the player that people want to talk about the most is Wright. Their point guard, if you want to call him point guard, shooting guard, combo guard, however you want to put it. I think sometimes with how teams are structured these days in the era of positionless offense, throwing out terms that you might deem to be archaic, kind of out of touch, can sometimes mislead. So Wright the fourth is definitely their top player, along with Eli Parquet, who was on their the Pac-12 All Defense team. Then there was Evan Batty, who was conference honorable mention, and Jabari Walker, who was on their all freshman team. So again, Colorado has a lot of accolades with the success that they had this season, and how Georgetown matches up with them will be interesting because there are some matchup. I don't want to use the word issues. There are just some interesting matchups. When you look at a guy like Parquet, where he is a lockdown defender. In fact, I think he's 6'3", and he led Colorado in block shots. What does that tell you? Block shots and steals. And this is a team that has a 7-footer. So then it becomes, do you shift him? If you're Colorado, do you play him on Dante Harris and you slide right over to Carey? That could be an advantageous matchup for Colorado, because now you're putting your best defensive player, who has all defensive team in your conference, and you put him on a freshman point guard playing obviously in his first NCAA tournament game. So do you try to turn him over? Georgetown for a lot of the season had problems with turnovers, and it started right at the head of the snake. So do you switch your all defensive guy, put him on point guard, slide right over to guard Carey? How does that impact? On the flip side, with Georgetown, do you do the same? Do you move Harris over to Parquet and then allow Carey to have that burden of covering right, which might not be a bad move for you, and you know both teams are going to play man. So these are matchups. They're not hypothetical matchups. They're not matchups if a team switches from zone to man. That's not how it works. This is a team that both teams are going to play. This is a game where both teams are going to play man-to-man defense, and it's going to start in the backcourt. Can Colorado turn over Georgetown? Can Georgetown avoid those turnover problems that they had at the beginning of the season? So that's going to be how it works for Georgetown in some of the early things matchups. But I cannot do this alone, because when you want to talk Georgetown, there's only one person in the Washington, D.C. area. Not only one person, but the person in the Washington, D.C. area that you want to start off with is Bobby Bancroft, and he is so nice enough. That guy is so busy. He's on every outlet. He does a lot of Georgetown stuff himself, but he took time out of his day to spend it with us, and I really, really appreciate it. So we're going to all welcome in my man, Bobby Bancroft. How you doing, Bobby?
What's up, man? It's nice to be on a Georgetown version of this. I've done some Colorado stuff today.
Oh, that's great. Early on, I was already talking about Georgetown and some of the matchups, and I went into that backcourt where you have Parquet, however you pronounce the one guard's name, along with Wright, and maybe some of the possibilities.
Who?
The Eli.
No, I'm making the joke for the.
Yeah. We'll get to that.
The fake controversy.
yes, but just how you could see it where they slide Parquet over on Harris and have him pressure. He's an all defensive guy, and I've gone back and watching parts of two of Colorado's games. He's a really good defensive player, and how that could really pressure Harris and maybe cause Georgetown the turnovers. Do you think that we could see a possibility where Wright is covering Carey and you start out Parquet on Harris?
Yeah, I think so. I think also this is kind of related to what you're saying. Knock on wood. What we haven't really seen all year is Harris get in foul trouble, which, I hadn't even really thought of that. Andrew from Casual Hoya brought that up. So on the other end, I guess I'm less concerned about who's guarding Harris and more maybe concerned about what Harris is doing on defense himself.
Yeah, and that's why I would think that Patrick would start Carey on Wright. That to me would make most sense, and not have Harris on him, because they run a ton of screen and roll for him. He will give it up, and he will come off. He will give it up. He'll get away from the ball, and he'll come back on staggers. So you're trying to cover him on the move. Not a lot of ISO, at least in the games I watched. It wasn't a lot of ISO clear out. Let me see if I can take you off the dribble. They're always trying to get him in some sort of action. So you're right. In that sense, it could be a situation where you have to watch what Harris is doing. But when you first saw the announcement, kind of what was your initial thoughts of them matching up against Colorado?
I don't know where you find the time to watch everything. I haven't watched a lot of Pac-12 this year, man. Mm-hmm. So, I think I made the joke. Was it you and Ben were on with us on Kente Corner afterwards? And I said, hey, Ben, give us an update on the Buffaloes. And I was making a joke because it's not, they were on that list of teams that you'd probably see. I was just more happy. And obviously we'd already seen Texas Tech called. I didn't want the attention to go away from Georgetown and focus on a player that was transferring. So I was just happy that it wasn't Texas Tech.
And you alluded to a little earlier, would you like to jump into what happened with the whole thing with Wright and who and how a comment in a press conference was misinterpreted?
Yeah, so a guy that I don't even know, apparently he's from the Denver Post, a columnist. I had to check him out. He's very low count. I know Twitter's not everything, but I think in 2021, it's unfortunately more than maybe it should be. So he doesn't have a whole lot of followers. I was a little surprised by that. And it seemed like he was manufacturing bulletin board material, storyline, controversy. Somebody asked Pickett, was it Ron? Somebody asked Pickett about Wright. And he said, who? And he said it in a way that wasn't like, I know who it is. I'm just respecting his name by acting like I don't know who he is. He wasn't sure about his name for a second. And then he immediately knew, the point guard. Oh, yeah, that's all we're doing is game planning for him. So to act like Georgetown doesn't know who McKinley Wright is just, if you're on that audio or that video, and if you go back and you watch it, it's archived, you can see that it's just total bunk.
Right. And to be fair, and this is defending Pickett, but to be fair, a lot of times when you are trying to scout a team that you don't usually play in a tournament situation, you do refer to players as numbers. Yeah, you don't really refer to them as names when you go into your prep. This is 25. This is 24. These are the things that they like to do. You don't really call them by name because your players don't know who they are by name.
And I pointed it out saying that often, when we're sitting in that room, years past, Ron always says, what'd you think of 12? How'd you guys trap 25? So I think that if Ron had said, McKinley Wright, I don't even know what number he is. So I guess I'm disrespecting him. But, I think if he had said the number, I think Pickett would have immediately known. And like, look, Georgetown just went from New York City straight to Indy to quarantine for 2 days. And while I know the coaches gave them stuff to look at, to expect all the players memorize all the players' names, like that's what media does. That's what fans do. The players that are actually playing are focusing on different types of things than the guy's name, And I was on with some guys from Colorado, and I said, look, if McKinley Wright is who I think he is, and he's a very good player, almost a 2,000 point scorer, very polished veteran. If it takes this, fake disrespect to get him going, I'd be surprised. I think he's already going. He's a senior. He's ready. This isn't going to do it. But then that same columnist tweeted, I guess Colorado had their day today. And, Wright said something to the effect of, well, they're going to know who I am soon or something like dun, dun, dun. It's just, come on, man. What is this, WWE? Give me a break. And, I mentioned the guys in Colorado. I said, do you think that McKinley Wright knows who all Georgetown players' names are? Probably not.
Right.
Right.
So you've been covering Georgetown for a long, long time. Where would you rank this run in being an unexpected run that just makes you, as a fan and as someone that covers the team, so happy?
I mean, since I've covered the team, followed them my whole life, but since I've covered the team, they had a run in 2013 after Greg Winnington was suspended for, I don't even know if they said academics, so I think we assumed it was academics. They went on a run and won 13 straight games in the Big East. Maybe it was 10. It was something like that. And they went from being like under 500 in the Big East to winning the Big East in 2013. Okay. That run was incredible. But as we know, college basketball, unfortunately, has become a sport of what'd you do in March, right? And no one knows that more than Georgetown because they've had some really good seasons and March hadn't gone their way. Well, this is the exact opposite. The season was kind of okay. It got better. It was good. It got better. But March has been fabulous. So, I mean, since I've been covering the team, which was Otto's freshman year of 11-12, this is, like I said, this and that run in 2013. So, I mean, it's right there. And as far as unexpected, it's got to be this.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. So let's just shift back to the Big East tournament just for a second. And the win over Creighton. And the only reason I bring up Creighton is because when Patrick Ewing was asked what team does this Colorado team most resemble, after he said, well, it really doesn't, teams really don't resemble teams, he did say Creighton. So if we revisit that Creighton game and that performance, does that give you some sort of confidence that Georgetown could be able to defend what Colorado likes to do?
I mean, of course it does, but you have to remember they played them 3 times and Creighton gave it to them once too, Right. So it's not like he mentioned a team that Georgetown swept. I mean, obviously what just happened in New York is just unprecedented. I mean, these guys went on a 46-8 run. That doesn't even sound like a basketball run. It sounds like something happens in football, right? So but McDermott and the guys, man, like they came to McDonough and they gave it to Georgetown, so I think if you're thinking of the entire season against Creighton, you have to think, well, this is a team that can obviously come out and beat you. But if you only think of what we just saw, you're probably thinking, oh, here we go. We're going to the Final Four.
Do you allow yourself to look ahead a little bit, like to that second
because
round
I'm not playing. Yeah, because I'm not playing. Of course I can.
So when you do look at that, do you think there's a possibility? You talk about what has happened to Georgetown in the past when teams have upset them, and like Davidson, they upset Georgetown, then they made the little run. Do you think Georgetown could do that, upset Colorado, and then make like a Davidson type of run?
Yeah. And again, I'm not on the team, so I can have these thoughts and dreams. When you look at the 1 seed, if you want to get really crazy, Michigan's a little bit hurt, right?
Yes. Yes.
So, in a perfect world, you look at it and you're like, what 1 seed would you want to see sitting there? I mean, I think Michigan probably is at the top of the list. Plus, there's a little bit of the Terrence Williams decided to, renege on his offer from Georgetown and go to Michigan. And you have Juwan Howard and Patrick Ewing, so there's a lot there if you want to really start thinking about long term. But for Georgetown, it's a pretty good 4-team matchup in that the storylines. Let's say UNC Greensboro upsets the Seminoles. Well,
Yeah.
that Hoyas lost last season to UNC Greensboro is when the bottom kind of fell out, right? That's when Akinjo said peace. That's when LeBlanc said peace. A couple games later, they had lost 2 other guys. So, I mean, and the matchup against Florida State, which in my mind for the last couple of years, Florida State's been more Georgetown than Georgetown if you think about historical ways that they play. So it's a pretty interesting group they're in.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And out of all the number 1 seeds, Michigan is the one I think that is the one that could go out the fastest. And as much as I would like to see Juwan Howard go forward, to me, they are the most vulnerable. And Illinois, and maybe it's because I see way too much Big Ten basketball, but Michigan is very beatable right now. So, no, I certainly do agree with you there. What is the one player for Georgetown that you said such and such has to play great if Georgetown, or has to be the best player on the floor if Georgetown wants to win?
I think it's a lot because it's been, such a change since the pause, but I think it's got to be Belay. And, I feel like we know we're going to get something from Javon. Okay. Harris hasn't played at his all Big East tournament, MVP level the whole run, but he's been consistent. Pickett, even if it's not going offensively, can really lock down other players. Okay. And Wahab is kind of show up and get near a double-double no matter what. So for me, it's like there's those nights where Belay has 19, has 8 rebounds. He's just a pest defensively. Then there's those nights where he doesn't get involved, 5 points, 5 fouls, so I really think it comes down to him. And if you want to point to one guy since the post-pause, run, it's him, right? So I'm going to stick with him.
So if you were a coach, I want you to put on your coaching hat just for a second. Colorado does not do a lot of doubling in the post. At least when I've watched some of the stuff that they don't do a lot of doubling in the post because they don't feel like they need to. Knowing that Wahab has problems dealing with double teams,
I would double him in the post.
Okay, all right. You didn't let me finish. Yeah, you would definitely kind of stray away from what you usually do and come get him.
Yeah, I mean, I know, a lot of times, we talk to coaches all the time and they do the whole thing. Well, if we're not going to play this way all the time, I'm not going to switch it up. But I think in a tournament setting, I would. And for as good as Wahab can be, we know if he puts it on the floor, that's a problem. Okay, if he gets crowded, you want him to just go right up with a hook. I don't even care what shoulder. Okay, and we know his assist to turnover ratio is just historically low. So like if you double him, he either puts it on the floor or he doesn't find guys in the perimeter. I would absolutely double him.
I hate to put you on the spot, but I have to ask this question. Do you know how many times that Georgetown has been a 12 seed? And if so, do you know what their record is?
In the NCAA tournament, it's 0.
Okay. All right. I was wondering what it was, and because I honestly didn't know. But I thought
the lowest they've been is twice. They've been a 10. They were a 10 in 97, the year after Iverson and them left. Victor Page got them to be a 10 seed. They lost to Charlotte in the first round. And then in 2001, the Hoyas were a 10 seed that just got by Arkansas at the buzzer. Then they played Hampton in a 10-15 game. And then they lost to Maryland in the Sweet 16 as the Terps were off to the Final Four.
Was that Boise, or am I wrong?
Yep. Yeah.
That was Boise. Okay. I thought that's where that matchup took place. So, a lot of people fill out brackets. I will tell you, I'm one of the ones who hate to fill out a bracket. Do you do the whole bracket thing?
I think I mentioned this to you the other day. I'm the kind of guy that when the team I follow isn't really relevant, I kind of take my ball and go home and pretend like it's not happening. So that's happened a lot recently, with Georgetown. So not really, honestly. I haven't really done it a lot. I'm going to do this one, and I advise people for entertainment purposes only that you don't really want to pick with your heart, but at the same time, this tournament is so wacky. I think it's going to be wackier than normal this year. So, you know what? It's like, if you're a Georgetown fan, do you want to pick them to lose? That's not fun, right? So, but then if you pick them to go further than they probably should, don't put a lot of money on it.
Right. Do you know what their odds are?
Better than they were last week.
Very nice. Very, very nice. If you had an MVP for Georgetown for the entire season, including the Big East tournament, who would it be?
Patrick Ewing.
Oh, and why would it be? Why would it be Ewing?
Because we've just seen, I mean, you watch all their games, like the
Yeah,
night and day of this team is unbelievable. And the belief that he's instilled in them, I've mentioned many times where we ask him questions that I think are very fair and very reasonable. And he's come back every time with, try and lead him down a path of, well, season's not going well. Do you think you're going to start playing the freshmen more? And by more, that doesn't mean 40 minutes. It means find spots for Clark, find spots for Berger, find spots more for Sibley, Holloway. And he looked me in the eye and be like, I'm trying to win every game. And we heard some of the players say it too. Like during the pause, Kerry came out and said, well, I've been watching Big East games because I'm trying to see whatever's going on. And in my head, it's just like, well, that's very optimistic. That's very ambitious. But it actually came through. So we're only seeing just a little teeny bit of what is going on in the program. And to have them get to the point where not that they just performed, but the kids believed and they wanted to be there. Because I tell you what, it didn't look like Marquette believed they could win 4 straight games. Okay. Okay.
right. Yes.
Patrick got those kids to believe. So I think it's for him. And he planned on going into the season with, a point guard named Jalen Harris. Right. And I'm sure the plan was to have Dante play probably about 10 to 15 minutes. So he had to do all of this with a completely new team. You can blame him for the departures if you want. I'm not saying you, but people in general can. But the fact that he found enough kids that fit what he wanted to do, and they did it, and they believed, I think it's got to be Patrick Ewing.
No, that makes perfect sense. And by the way, for those that scoring at home, Georgetown is currently 5.5 point underdogs to Colorado. I was asked this question, so I'm going to ask you this question. Ask you this question myself, which is: do you think the run that they made will carry over into continuing, I guess, success in recruiting? And could this be the jump to Ewing making Georgetown kind of an annual NCAA tournament participant?
I think it's hard. It's hard to go against that, really, because he did it with, what he was left with was the kids that wanted to stay. Okay. And then he picked up kids that wanted to come. And I know it's hard on the outside to look at a school like Georgetown. They had gone 2 years under JT3 of not making it. Then this was looking like year 4 of not making it. And to go that long without making the tournament at Georgetown is just unheard of, right? Like literally since Big John got there, it's just not something that's happened. So it was really important to get there. And I think that the way they did it, with Dante Harris basically playing the role that Akinjo and McClung both decided to give up on. So he found an unheralded guy to run his team, and he found grad transfers that wanted to come here. I think it only shows positive going forward. He already, good God, I'm not trying to be like the Patrick Ewing hour, but he already had a great class coming in before this run. So I can only look at the players that he's recruiting, particularly locally, looking at what Georgetown did, be like, I want to be a part of that. Like, look at what Dante Harris did. And that's what's so confusing about Akinjo and McClung leaving is they got there the minute they were there. It's like he gave them so much freedom and liberty that you thought would translate, and it didn't. And maybe there's something with those kids that just, whatever. But I think that this could only be a positive. And I think that they're ahead of schedule. But I think that based on what we know for coming in next year, we were assuming that they would be, a better team next year. So this can only help.
I always viewed the Georgetown job in some ways, don't take it literally, almost like Notre Dame football. I don't think that the job is ever a bad job. And I never understood why, just because Georgetown did have some down years, I would see big time print media guys try to say, oh, well, that's really not a good job. Is there a way Georgetown is not a good job?
Well, I think one of the things with that, and not to get sentimental or to get, Big John passing, and I think that there was a stigma out there from coaches and from people outside the program of, if I take this job or if I go for this job, how much control do I actually have? Right. And there was that idea that, are you really in charge? And it's a fair question because since Big John decided to retire, we've seen his lead assistant, his eldest son, and his best player take the job. So I think when people talk about it not being a good job, I think that's what they refer to. Obviously college basketball mourns the loss of Big John, and it will be different going forward. Like what kind of, dictates the way that ship goes. And I think that's what a lot of people mean when they say it's not as good of a job as I think it is.
Right. Yeah. And that's fair. If we could just stray from Georgetown for a split second because of news that happened yesterday. I know you cover a lot of teams in the Washington, D.C. area. George Mason let Dave Polson go yesterday. Kind of what was your thoughts on that?
They were in a tough spot of they have to either part ways, which they did,
right,
or they have to extend him, right? Because you can't coach with no contract. Like you can't go recruit kids and the other well, you know what? They're going to let him go next April. They're going to let him go next May. And I feel like he had some very mediocre seasons. I think that the fact that they didn't even contend for the NIT is a problem. And I think it could be a very good job, but you kind of come back to the point, the way I understand it, with the way Larinaga left. He wanted to make the money that Shaka was paid at VCU. And from what I understand, Mason didn't want to go that high. Okay. And they kind of called his bluff maybe because he had chances to go to Providence and go to Seton Hall. I know this is really old, but this is kind of relevant to where I'm going to get to, is that you go through Hewitt, who was a big name and probably wasn't even looking to coach at the time, to be honest. Okay. We haven't seen him looked at in any other coaching searches. Then you get Polson, who did a good job at Bucknell, and it's a step up from his league to the A10. And that's where I think Mason needs to figure out what they're doing. Do we want to pay as one of as the biggest state school in Virginia and one of the biggest schools in the country without football? Do we want to pay our big sport the kind of big money it needs to be in the A10? And if the answer to that is no, I would suggest going back to the CAA.
Right, and that's fair. So that's fair, and Mason is near and dear to my heart, and there are 2 or 3 coaches I would like to at least see them interview. Who knows if they're going to interview him, but one of them is Tony Skinn, who is currently on Seton Hall's bench. And
yeah,
I would like to see them at least bring him in, even if they don't end up hiring. So out of the locals that are in the NCAA,
and by the way, I don't think that they should go to the CAA. I'm basically saying that as like a loving way because I like that place. I mean, I'm a JMU guy, but I spent a lot of time working at the field house. I've been covering the team off and on for different publications and outlets. They absolutely fit the profile of an A10 team right now, but they need to start acting like it.
Right. Yep. So out of the local teams, or what we like to call local teams, the Liberties, the Virginia Techs, Maryland, Georgetown, which one has the greatest chance to win? Which one has the greatest chance to lose?
Are we including UVA?
We'll include UVA. Yeah, we'll go ahead and include UVA.
I guess it's hard to say because we don't know which of their players might be ineligible because of protocols.
Right. So we'll throw them out. Let's throw them out.
Yeah, that's really hard. I mean, it's easy for me just to say Georgetown based on what they just did. I think Maryland has a really nasty matchup with UConn.
Mm-hmm.
There's some teams that if they were playing them instead, I would maybe pick them. I think UConn. I like UConn to get out of the first weekend. So okay. I think I'm gonna stick with Georgetown.
Yeah, and it's funny. Mark Turgeon was talking earlier about they like to switch a lot of screens, but he wants Marcel on Book Night, which could be a classic match because we've seen how good Book Night can be.
He's a pro.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. So you're right. Maryland does have their handful, especially for a team that stops scoring sometimes in just like insanely long stretches. When you look at their roster, like what the heck, dude? But yeah, no, that's fair. That's definitely fair. So when you do look at Georgetown, Colorado, plus that 5.5, and we'll say for entertainment purposes only, where would you go with that?
Yeah, I'd take the 5.5. I wouldn't do money line, even though I think they're going to advance. Like I just said a minute ago, I'd take the points for sure.
Yeah, and that's what I would think. So that was for anyone who's watching or will watch this. that does tend to use this time of year to wager a bit, especially with where wagering is now. So the NCAA spoke about that. They released something where they said they're going to keep a close eye because they are in a state that now has wagering, and it will be tough for the NCAA now not to be in a state where there isn't legal wagering. Do you think the idea that gambling has been passed in so many states that there is some sort of threat to college basketball?
No, I think it's more of a threat to society
Okay.
in general.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I just think, I mean, this pod could go a completely different way, but I just think now you can sit there on your phone and just lose money, whereas you had to like work a little harder to do that.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. I know in the Commonwealth of Virginia, they do not allow you to wager on any teams that are in Virginia. So, if you're on one of the apps, you won't see Norfolk State versus Appalachian State. That's not
Yeah.
on there, nor is, Virginia Tech or UVA or the case may be. I just feel like sometimes we're still living in a world that doesn't exist. You didn't need for gambling to be legal in all these states for there to be a threat of some sort of shenanigans just because people were gambling, whether it was offshore, whatever the case may be. Sometimes I just feel like the NCAA lives in a world that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, I mean, look, people are going to find ways to do things. And I know that you get in the argument of like, how much should the government, babysit its citizens and all that kind of things. I just feel like generally, and I haven't been to Vegas, which is just embarrassing to admit, but I've been to Charlestown, I've been to Atlantic City. Are those happy places that you want to hang out in? I'll leave that up to the listeners.
No, that's fair. That's fair. I've been. I used to go out more, but I've been to the casinos in Las Vegas. And you're right. There are times where it's very exciting. There are times where you take a look at someone and you just know they are questioning their very existence because of what has happened that day. So I'm not going to keep you long. I know that you're really, really busy. I just an overall feel of where the program is right now and your optimism going forward to what Georgetown could be over the next 4 years.
Yeah, like I said, I think most Georgetown followers were really looking at year 3 of Ewing as being that tournament team. And I think if you look at what happened in the first couple of games last season, they were looking like a team. I'm not saying they were a surefire team, but they were pretty deep, and I trust they would have figured it out to get to the NCAA tournament. Then with what happened, everyone's pretty low, right? Understandably. Without even speculating or getting into why certain people left, it wasn't a great look. It just wasn't. So then you're like, okay, you reset. Hopefully by year 5 or 6, you make the tournament. And I said it earlier, it's crazy how your entire team can just be affected by a couple days of a season. And I think that's what just happened. And I do think that, and I know we kind of share the same opinion on this, is that if all these freshmen show up, Georgetown would be in a better spot next year if somebody stays. One of the kids that can stay stays as a grad, or they get a grad transfer to help out, not as just help, not to be the focal point. So I think Georgetown's in a good spot, and I think maybe one of the most positive things out of this week is that when Ewing gets on a roll, he's a pretty entertaining, engaging person, and we saw his personality. And he doesn't. I didn't cover Chris Mullen and St. John's, every day, every week, whatever. But man, when people try and compare Patrick Ewing to Chris Mullen, I think it's clear that Patrick loves Georgetown and loves his job. I'm not saying Chris didn't love St. John's, but I'm not sure that he loved his job. Okay. And I think if you're a Georgetown fan, the fact that Ewing was able to get just energized during that run, I think has to just make you so happy for the future, because you have a guy that loves what he's doing at a place that he loves. and it's hard to see him not succeeding.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Bobby. I try to keep these things to about 30 minutes because no one's going to sit here and watch this for an hour, but it was great that you came on. Thank you for making time.
Yeah, no, I gotta step up my game and get more visual like you've got. I just do the audio podcast. I gotta step in. I gotta get my whole background fixed. Got Serena and Ovi. You know, I gotta step up my game, man. I like it. I like you bringing it out of me.
No, it's you know what? I went and got a green screen kit, did a lot
No,
of
it's awesome.
My 14-year-old son, thank God for him. He he always assists me in doing these things and testing and everything else. He's so great. But again, thanks a lot, and hopefully we'll certainly be talking again probably before and after that game.
Awesome.
All right, thanks, my man.
See ya.
Thanks. That was Bobby Bancroft, my man, and it's so fun to talk Georgetown, and we've been there all year, and the fans have been there all year, and we've seen where Georgetown has grown and kind of the low points of this season and the high points of this season. So we're certainly looking forward to the tournament, and I am certainly looking forward to rejoining to you guys tomorrow. No, Friday. No, it's tomorrow. It's Thursday. Thursday will be the first episode of Good Morning March Madness as the games start to kick off. The playing games start to kick off here on Thursday. We will have a show in the morning to kick that day off. We'll go over the games of that today. Those days we will go over the lines of that today for people who choose to wager. And we'll take a look. It'll be a brief show. It won't be 30, 45 minutes, but we'll take a look at all those things. So we look forward to seeing you again tomorrow morning. And again, we thank our guest, Bobby Bancroft. We thank our guest from yesterday, Herbert Seward, when he came on to talk about Maryland. And we will see you again tomorrow morning.